Okay. I need to say something before I even think about touching these cards tonight. I was driving home earlier, and I mean literally 20 minutes before I sat down to record this, and I got a voice note from a friend of mine, someone I have known for years. And she was crying. Not dramatic crying, that quiet kind of crying where someone is trying to hold it together while they talk, and you can hear them failing at it. And she said to me, she said, Elena, I think I finally see it. I think I finally see who they actually are. And I just feel so stupid that it took me this long. And I pulled over, right there on the side of the road, because I needed to hear what she was about to say. And as she was talking, I kept feeling this pressure building in my chest, not from what she was telling me specifically, but from something else. Something that kept saying, this is not just her story. This is somebody else's story right now, too. This is the story of someone who is going to find this video tonight. So, I got home. I sat down. I did not even take my jacket off. I just went straight to the cards because I knew I could not wait. And if you found this video tonight, if the title made something in you, go quiet and still in that way that happens when something is speaking directly to the part of you that has been trying to figure something out, then you are exactly who I felt in the car. You are the reason I pulled over. You are the reason I came straight here without even taking my jacket off. And I need you to understand something before we go into this reading. The title of this video is not clickbait. I know how it looks. I know titles like this can feel like they're designed to grab you. But I need you to hear me when I say this one is real. What is about to come through in these cards is one of the most specific and most important messages I have felt called to deliver in a long time. Because there is a test that happened in your life. Maybe recently. Maybe you are still in the middle of it right now, and you do not fully realize that is what it is. And the results of that test have exposed something about someone in your life or possibly multiple people that your guides need you to see clearly before you take another step forward. So if you are not ready to see it, I mean that sincerely, this is the moment to click away. Because once you see this, you cannot unsee it. And your guides are telling me that you are ready. That is why you are here. But I want to give you the choice. Still here? Good, let's get into it. Card 1, the Seven of Cups. Yes. Okay. This makes complete sense as the opening card for this reading. The Seven of Cups is a card about illusions, about the gap between what something appears to be and what it actually is when you remove the projection and the hoping and the wishful thinking. And just look at the raw reality. 7 cups, each one containing something different, some beautiful, some deceiving, some that look like treasure but are actually traps. And the figure in the card is standing there, staring at all of them, with this expression that is somewhere between wonder and confusion. Because they cannot tell yet. They cannot tell which cups are real and which ones are smoke. And that is where you have been. That is the energy you have been living inside. Here is the specific truth this card is opening with tonight. There is someone in your life, or there was someone very recently who presented themselves to you in a particular way, a particular version of themselves that they curated very carefully. And you, because you are the kind of person who leads with genuine energy, who shows up as yourself, who extends real trust to people you let in, you received that version of them at face value. You believed what was being presented because you would not have presented something false, and so it did not fully occur to you that someone else would. Let me give you a specific example, because I want this to land in a real way. There is a woman named Camille. Camille met someone in a professional setting about 2 years ago. A potential business collaborator, someone who came in with enthusiasm, with vision, with what appeared to be a genuinely aligned set of values. They talked for hours in that first meeting. Everything this person said matched exactly what Camille had been looking for in a creative partner. The energy was right. The language was right. The timing felt divinely orchestrated in a way that made Camille think, okay, This is one of those moments where God sends you exactly what you asked for. So Camille invested. Not just financially, though there was financial investment too. She invested her ideas, her creative strategy, her network. She made introductions she would not have made for just anyone. She shared things she had been building quietly for a long time, things that were still fragile in the way that new creative work is always fragile before it has been fully developed and protected. She gave this person access, real access, the kind you only give when you genuinely believe someone is who they say they are. And then slowly, and it is always slowly, isn't it? It is never dramatic all at once things began to reveal themselves. Commitments that were made casually and then forgotten even more casually. Credit for ideas that had been shared in those early conversations appearing in other places without Camille's name attached. A subtle shift in the energy of the collaboration where Camille was always the one bringing and this person was always the one receiving. And the balance had somehow become so normalized that pointing it out would have felt like an accusation rather than an observation. Camille stayed longer than she should have because she kept returning to that first conversation. That divinely orchestrated feeling, that sense of alignment. She kept trying to reconcile the person who showed up in month 1 with a person who was showing up in month 14, and she could not make them match. And the dissonance of that, the mental and emotional energy spent trying to make two incompatible pictures of the same person fit into one frame, was exhausting her in ways she could not fully explain to anyone else. The Seven of Cups is telling you tonight that the version of this person or this situation that you fell in love with, that you trusted, that you organized your energy and your plans and your emotional world around, was one of the cups. It was real in the sense that you genuinely experienced it, but it was not the full picture. And your guides are here tonight to help you see the full picture clearly so that you can make decisions based on what is actually real rather than what you were shown in the beginning. You are not naive for having believed it. You are not foolish for having invested. You are someone who leads with genuine energy, meeting someone who was not yet ready or not yet willing to match it. That is not a character flaw in you, but it is information. And the Seven of Cups says, it is time to stop looking at the illusion and start looking at the reality. Card 2, the Seven of Wands. Oh, this card. Okay, yes. The Seven of Wands is the card of someone who is being tested. Standing on high ground, holding their position, with 6 wands coming at them from below and 1 in their hands to defend with. And the thing about this figure that I always come back to is this. They look tired. They are not fresh. They have clearly been standing in this position for a while, but they have not moved. They have not surrendered the high ground. They are still there. That is you. And I want to name what the test actually was, because I think a lot of you have been going through it without having language for what was happening. The test was not a formal thing. Nobody announced it. Nobody sent you an email saying, heads up, this next season is going to be an evaluation of your character, your boundaries, your ability to stay grounded in who you are when someone is actively or passively pressing against that. It just happened. And it happened through this person or this situation in a very specific way. The test looked like this. Someone in your life, whether they were conscious of it or not, began to apply pressure to the version of you that you have been building, to your boundaries, to your standards, to your sense of what you are willing to accept and what you are not. And the pressure was not always loud. Sometimes it was quiet. Sometimes it was just a consistent pattern of behavior that asked you, over and over again in different ways, the same fundamental question. How much of yourself are you willing to compromise to keep this relationship, this opportunity, this situation intact? Let me tell you about a man named Theo. Theo had been in a friendship with someone for about 4 years, the kind of friendship that started strong and genuinely was strong for the first couple of years. But somewhere in the 3rd year, something shifted. Theo had been doing a lot of internal work, therapy, boundaries, really examining what kinds of relationships he wanted to invest in and what kinds of dynamics he was no longer willing to participate in. He was changing, growing, and his friend who had not been doing that same work began to respond to the changed version of Theo in ways that were not fully conscious, but were very consistent. Would make jokes that were a little too pointed about Theo becoming too serious or thinking too highly of himself. Would test Theo's new boundaries in small ways, asking for things Theo had said he was no longer comfortable giving, then expressing disappointment when Theo held the line. Would occasionally disappear for weeks when Theo did not show up in the old familiar way, and then reappear when Theo checked in, acting as if nothing had happened. And Theo kept second-guessing himself, kept asking whether he was being too sensitive, whether the growth he was doing was making him difficult to be around, whether holding his boundaries was actually just a sophisticated form of selfishness. Because when you are someone who genuinely cares about being a good person, it is very easy for someone to weaponize that care against you. It is very easy for someone to make your growth feel like the problem rather than the solution. But here's what Theo eventually understood, and what the Seven of Wands is telling you tonight. The test was never really about the friend. The test was about Theo. It was about whether Theo was going to hold the ground he had claimed, or whether external pressure was going to push him back down to a version of himself that was smaller and easier to be around. And every time Theo held the boundary, every time he chose the high ground, even when it was uncomfortable, he passed the test. He did not know he was passing it. It did not feel like passing in the moment. It felt like conflict and loneliness and self-doubt. But he was passing it. The Seven of Wands is telling you the same thing tonight. You have been in a test. You have been holding ground that someone else has been consciously or unconsciously trying to take from you. And the fact that you are still here, still standing, still in possession of your values and your sense of self, even after everything that has been applied against it, that is not a small thing. That is actually everything. You passed the test. Now it is time to see clearly what the test revealed about the person on the other side of it. Card 3, the moon reversed. Okay, the moon reversed. This is the card of something coming out of hiding, of something that was in the dark being brought forcibly into the light, not by choice, not by grace, but by the simple fact that darkness has a shelf life. And when the moon reverses, that shelf life has expired. Something is being revealed right now in your life. And I want to be very specific about what that something is, because I think your guides need you to have language for it so that you stop explaining it away. What is being revealed is the character of someone who has been presenting a version of themselves that was not fully accurate, not fully honest, not fully aligned with who they actually are when the performance stops and the real motivations come to the surface. And the way it is being revealed is not through a dramatic confrontation or an undeniable betrayal, though. For some of you watching it may have been that. For most of you, it is being revealed through something quieter and in some ways more profound. It is being revealed through how this person behaved during your test. Because here is what a test does. A test removes the comfortable conditions that allow a person to show you their best self. It removes the easy moments and the good times and the abundance and the stability that makes it simple to be kind and generous and present. And what is left the behavior that shows up when things get hard, when there is something at stake, when they have to choose between their comfort and your well-being. That is the real person. That is the character that was underneath the presentation the whole time. Let me give you a scenario that I think is going to resonate with a significant number of you. Serena had been in a romantic relationship for about 2 years. Solid relationship on the surface. Partner was attentive and communicative during the good times, the vacations, the celebrations, the easy seasons where life was running smoothly. But Serena went through a difficult period about 18 months in. Not a crisis exactly, but a hard season, a career setback, some family stress. A period where she was not at her most radiant and her most together and her most easy to be around. And she noticed something during that season that she filed away without fully examining at the time. Her partner became less available. Not dramatically, just subtly less engaged. A little more impatient. A little quicker to redirect conversations away from what Serena was going through and back toward lighter topics. A little less interested in sitting in the difficulty with her. And Serena told herself it was just because he was also going through a stressful period. Told herself everyone has their limits. Told herself she was probably asking for too much. And then her hard season passed. And he came back fully attentive, communicative, present, and Serena let the memory of what she had observed fade. Because the good version was back, and the good version was genuinely good. But then another hard season came. Different circumstances, same pattern. His subtle withdrawal during her difficulty, his return when the difficulty passed. And this time, Serena did not file it away. This time, she held onto it. And the moon reversed is what happens in that moment of holding on, of refusing to let the return of the good version erase what the difficult version revealed. The truth that is coming out of hiding for you through this card tonight is this. How someone treats you when you are struggling is who they are. How someone responds to your growth, your boundaries, your needs during the inconvenient moments, that is the character that was underneath the presentation the entire time. The test did not create that character. The test simply made it visible. And now that it is visible, you owe it to yourself to see it clearly and to respond to what you actually see rather than what you were shown in the beginning. Card 4, the Justice card. Okay. I felt this one coming and I am so glad it is here. Because this is the card that shifts the energy of this entire reading from exposure to resolution. Justice. And when I say justice, I do not mean revenge. I do not mean punishment. I do not mean the universe coming in to settle a score on your behalf in some dramatic, visible way, though sometimes that does happen. What justice means in this reading, in this position, coming in after the test and the revelation, is alignment. Cosmic realignment. The universe recalibrating your life back to what is actually true and what is actually fair based on what has been revealed. Because here is what justice understands that we sometimes lose sight of when we are in the middle of a painful realization. You cannot continue to give equal energy, equal access, equal trust, equal investment to someone whose behavior has revealed that they are not operating with equal integrity. It does not matter how long you have known them. It does not matter what the history is. It does not matter how much you invested in who you thought they were. Justice says the ledger has to be balanced. And balancing the ledger does not mean punishing them. It means adjusting your investment to match the reality of what you have received. Let me show you what this looks like practically through someone I want to call Daniel. Daniel was part of a professional network for several years, a close-knit group of people in the same industry who supported each other's work, shared opportunities, made introductions, showed up for each other in genuine and consistent ways. Or so Daniel believed. He was one of the most generous members of the group. If someone needed a connection he had, he made it. If someone needed feedback on a project he had expertise in, he gave his full attention. He celebrated people's wins publicly and loudly and without any transactional expectation attached. And then, Daniel went through a period where he needed the group to show up for him. He launched something significant, something he had been building for a long time that he was genuinely vulnerable about. He asked the group for support, not money, just amplification. Just the same energy he had given consistently for years. And the response was quiet. Not hostile, not dramatic, just quiet. A fraction of the engagement he had given others. Polite acknowledgement, but not genuine investment. And Daniel watched it happen with this growing sense of clarity that was uncomfortable, but also somehow clarifying. He could see, for the first time with real precision, which relationships in that network were reciprocal and which ones had always been extractive. Which people had been receiving his generosity as a resource, and which people had been receiving it as a genuine exchange. Justice arrived for Daniel not through a confrontation, but through a decision. He simply and quietly redirected his energy. He stopped making himself equally available to the people whose behavior during his moment of need had shown him who they actually were. He did not announce it. He did not explain it. He just let the natural consequence of their behavior be that they received less access to him. And in the space that was created by that adjustment, new relationships began to form. Relationships that were genuinely reciprocal from the beginning because Daniel had become far more discerning about who he invited in. That is the justice this card is bringing to you tonight. Not drama, not score settling, just clarity about where your energy belongs based on what the test revealed. The universe is supporting you in making that adjustment. In fact, the universe is not just supporting it, the universe is requiring it. Because what is coming for you in this next season of your life requires you to be surrounded by people whose character you have already seen, proven, rather than people whose presentation you are still trying to reconcile with their behavior. Rebalance the ledger. Not out of bitterness, out of wisdom. That is what justice is asking of you tonight. Card 5, the Ace of Swords. Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. This is the card that makes this whole reading click into place like a key turning in a lock. The Ace of Swords. A single sword emerging from a cloud, held upright, with a crown near the top. The sword in tarot represents the mind. Clarity, truth. The ability to cut through what is false and reach what is real. And the ace, the very first card of the suit, means this clarity is fresh. It is new. It is arriving right now in your life, not as a vague feeling or a subtle intuition, but as something sharp and specific and impossible to argue with once you have received it. This is the card that says, you know now. You finally, completely, undeniably know. And I want to use this closing card to talk about what you do with knowing. Because knowing is actually only the beginning. The Ace of Swords does not just hand you the truth and leave you standing there with it. It hands you the truth and asks you what you are going to do with it. Because truth, without action, is just pain. Truth that gets acted on, that gets used to make clearer decisions, to set firmer boundaries, to redirect investment, to change what you allow and what you walk away from, that is where truth becomes power. Let me tell you about a woman named Renee, because her story is the story of the Ace of Swords, in a way that I think is going to stay with you. Renee spent almost 3 years trying to figure out what was wrong with a relationship that could not be categorized easily. Not a romantic relationship, not quite a friendship, a mentor-mentee dynamic that had started with genuine warmth and genuine investment from both sides. The mentor was someone Renee deeply admired, someone who had accomplished things in their field that Renee was working toward. And the access this person had offered in the beginning was extraordinary. Real conversations, real feedback, real doors opened. But over time, Renee began to notice that the access was conditional in ways that were never stated but were very consistent. It was fully available when Renee was progressing in ways that reflected well on the mentor. It contracted when Renee began to develop her own voice, her own approach, her own perspective that diverged from the mentor's in meaningful ways. And there was a particular moment Renee described it as the moment she stopped being a student and started becoming a peer, where the dynamic changed so visibly that Renee could not unsee it. The warmth became intermittent. The mentorship became subtly competitive. Small moments began to accumulate where Renee felt the relationship being used to keep her one step behind rather than to help her move forward. She spent months trying to figure out whether she was imagining it. Months of going back and forth in her own mind, second-guessing her own observations, wondering whether she was being ungrateful or too sensitive, or reading meaning into things that had none. And then one day something happened, a specific, undeniable moment that she later described simply as, I saw it clearly. Not angrily, not dramatically, just clearly. Like a fog that had been present for so long, she had stopped registering it suddenly and completely lifted. And in that moment of clarity, Renee did not explode. She did not confront. She did not send the long message she had drafted 100 times in her head. She just made a decision. She decided that the energy she had been spending trying to maintain this relationship was going to be redirected toward building the thing she had been building all along, but now, without the subtle suppression of being in proximity to someone who needed her to stay slightly behind them. Within a year of making that quiet, internal, sword-sharp decision, Renee had accomplished more than she had in the entire previous 3 years combined. Not because the mentor had been the only thing holding her back, but because the mental and emotional bandwidth she had been spending on managing that dynamic, on trying to reconcile what she was experiencing with what she wanted to believe, was suddenly available for actual creation, for actual building, for actual forward movement. That is the Ace of Swords. That is what it does when you finally let it do its work. It clears. It cuts through. It hands you back your own mind, clear, sharp, and pointed in exactly the direction you were always meant to go. Here is what your guides need you to hear through this card as we close tonight. The clarity you have been reaching for the understanding of who this person really is, what this situation actually was, what the test actually revealed. That clarity is not cruel. It is a gift. The sharpest and most useful gift the universe could have given you at this exact moment in your journey. Because what is coming for you next requires you to move with precision. It requires you to be discerning about who comes with you and who gets left at this chapter. It requires a version of you who knows really knows. Not hopes, not wishes, but knows who the real ones are. You know now. You have always been perceptive. You have always felt things accurately. The only thing that ever slowed you down was the generosity of your own nature, the part of you that extends benefit of the doubt. Because you are the kind of person who would deserve it extended to you. That generosity is not a weakness, but it does need to be governed by what you have actually seen. And you have seen it now. The Ace of Swords does not ask you to become harder. It does not ask you to close up or to stop trusting or to carry this revelation as a wound. It asks you to carry it as wisdom, to let it be the thing that sharpens your discernment without hardening your heart, to use it to build what comes next with people whose character you have already witnessed rather than just their presentation. The test is over. The results are in. And the results, as painful as some of them may have been, to see have done something for you that no amount of hoping or praying for clarity could have done as efficiently. They have shown you exactly who is real in your life and exactly who is performing. And that information is not a loss. That information is the foundation of everything you are about to build. I want to stay here for a minute before I wrap up, because I started this reading by telling you about my friend in the voice note, the one who said she felt stupid that it took her so long to see it. And I want to speak to that directly, because I think that feeling, the feeling of why didn't I see this sooner? Why did it take a test for me to understand who this person really is? I think that feeling visits almost everyone who finds their way to a reading like this one. And I need you to hear this clearly and completely. You did not miss it because you were naive. You did not miss it because you were foolish or lacking discernment or too trusting. You missed it, or rather, you saw it, but could not fully receive it, because you were operating from the version of yourself that still believed in the presentation. The version of yourself that had not yet gone through enough of your own growth to understand that what someone shows you in their best moments and most intentional performances is genuinely and significantly different from who they are when the comfortable conditions are removed. You know the difference now. You know it in a way you did not know it before this season. And that knowing, that hard-won, test-proven, clarity through experience knowing, is something nobody can take back from you. Not the person who failed the test. Not the situation that unfolded in ways you did not expect. Not time. Nothing. You came out of this season with something. You came out with a sharper, more accurate, more discerning version of the compass that guides you toward the people who are genuinely aligned with you and away from the ones who are not. That is not nothing. That is actually one of the most valuable things a person can possess. So I am going to say what I could not say to my friend quickly enough in that voice note before she hung up, because she needed to go cry some more. And I am going to say it to you now. You are not behind because of this. You have not lost time because of this. Every moment you spent in that dynamic, every moment you spent navigating that test, every moment you spent trying to reconcile the performance with the reality, all of it was building the version of you that is now standing on the other side of it with clarity and with wisdom and with a precision about what you are willing to accept and what you are not, that is going to serve you for the rest of your life. The test is over. You passed. And what comes next is built on what you now know. Go build it. I love you, loves, genuinely. If this reading hit something real for you tonight, please hit the like button on your way out. It is the simplest way you can help this message get to the next person who needs to hear it. If you are not yet subscribed, please join this community. I show up here with whatever spirit puts on my heart, and I do not want you to miss what is coming next. The extended reading goes deeper into what your guides say your specific next steps are now that the test is over, that is going up on Patreon. And the link is in the first pinned comment below. And if you want to book a personal one-on-one reading with me directly, that link is there too. Thank you for being brave enough to watch this one all the way through. I mean that. Not everyone is ready for this kind of clarity. You were. That matters. I will see you in the next one. Bye, loves.